Okay, if you follow this comment back, it will take you to a picture. It's basically a animated child with a sign that says non-verbal doesn't mean non-thinking. And I put a paragraph about like basically what I thought about it, and I'm replying to Jules's comment, so it's taken me like a few days. But I wanted to elaborate on things a little bit more because um, in that comment, in the paragraph that I put up, basically was saying about like non-verbal communication. There are different ways of communicating. There's text communication, which obviously Jules has used text communication. There are many different forms of communication, and I feel that what Jules has put here, I really wish more people would understand this in response to the non-verbal communication doesn't mean non-thinking, because I think people do feel that. I think because and it doesn't just happen with children. People often automatically assume that the non-verbal communication, they automatically assume that that happens with children. It doesn't just happen with children. It also happens with adults as well. And also another thing that can happen is, I think it's called, if I'm remembering this correctly, autism regression, where an autistic person can regress and become nonverbal. And that is where they have it's because it's because they don't feel the need to communicate, and they've isolated themselves enough so that they don't feel the need to communicate at all, so they become nonverbal. That's basically how I can summarize that. It's the brain's way of saying, well, you don't need to communicate, so why should you communicate, kind of thing. um I'm probably butchering that, and I do apologize. Anyway, sorry, that was just a random tangent. But yes, there are many different ways of communicating. There's text communication, there is touch communication, there are different signs. You can learn sign language. There are so many different ways of communicating, and I feel that because we are so taught to communicate verbally, that all the other methods of communication are sort of left. And I also feel that a lot of the time, a lot of people, when an autistic child or an autistic adult is having a meltdown, they assume that means that is a form of communication. An autistic meltdown is a form of communication. An autistic shutdown is a form of communicating. It's communicating a want. It's communicating a need. Whether the adult or child or autistic individual is overstimulated, whether there is too much stimulation going on, whether they are trying to get your attention, it doesn't matter. The this is where it becomes a grey area, because if a child or adult is non-verbal and they are trying to communicate with you, and they are being not necessarily violent, but they are being a bit extra and they're doing it in that way, you have to learn their communication style, and you have to learn about how they communicate, and you have to sort of teach them to not react in that way, and teach them a method of communication that is best suited in that moment. Now, obviously, there are meltdowns where things become overstimulated. Light, there's light sensitivity, there is sound sensitivity. But things get too stimulation. There is too much. There is information overload. All of it can be too much. And when a autistic individual is having a meltdown, it can be overwhelmingly too much for an autistic individual to overcome that. And it's learning to communicate how you can better overcome those meltdowns and even shutdowns as well, because they're the opposite of that. Those shutdowns where literally it's just cutting out everything. But yeah, this is a very big conversation. I probably am not best person to handle it. I do want to have these conversations, but non-verbal doesn't mean non-thinking. They are picking things up. Non-verbal children are picking things up from parents, from their environment. They are reacting in certain ways. Even non-verbal adults are also doing the same. It doesn't mean that they are not not thinking, they are, and they are picking up on vibes, on patterns, on things like that. And you will find that nonverbal autistic individuals and autistic children are very hyper vigilant and very hypersensitive to what is going on around them because they have no method of communicating. So, as in, like, they have no verbal communication. So, they are learning how to communicate and they are picking up so much more than what a lot of people realize. And because people assume that nonverbal means non-thinking, that people assume that. So I just want people to be very much more aware of that. But also, a lot of the time, you'll often find that autistic individuals, such as myself, I do this too. I do a lot of the time as well, where small talk isn't really a thing. And I will be spoken to rather than starting a conversation. I would rather have somebody start a conversation with me. Um, and it's just I find it easier that way. Um, a lot of people seem to think that I'm great at communicating. I had time I said that I'm an excellent communicator. I really am not. I have to formulate my words. I have to find my words, think about my words. I've had to start and stop this recording 5 times before doing this. And in group conversations, I'm not the best. That is because my brain is trying to process everything at once and I can't do it. And that's where communication is key. I have to be like, that's the reason why I normally sit back. I normally sit back and listen to conversations. I don't normally get involved in conversations because it's not. That's a different. That's more the social communication aspect of things. It all blends into one, but communication is a huge factor, and um, yeah, huge topic. But yes, nonverbal doesn't mean non-thinking, and people have thought that because I'm quiet, that I'm not listening. I am. I'm just processing. Also, I have been called stupid. I have been called dumb because I'm not picking up things straight away. Um, and people have assumed that. Um, it is, I'm not nonverbal. That's a tongue twister. I'm not nonverbal, as in I can speak. However, I find it difficult to speak. And I'm sure I'm not the only autistic person that does find it difficult to speak. Um, there are pros and cons on both sides of that aisle. And it can be difficult, but it can be worked upon. As in, you can you just need to find the communication style of the individual that is nonverbal, of the child that is nonverbal, or adult that is nonverbal. This was really, 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 really big conversation, and I've only got 10 minutes. So let me know if you guys would like a live stream where we can sit and discuss this. If you would like that, I can set that up. Or if you guys have any other questions or anything like that, let me know in the comments, and I'll catch you guys later. Bye.